A stranger's smartphone in an American park and a locked door in a Chinese disciplinary camp might seem unrelated, but reading two recent reports together reveals a striking pattern in how young adults are losing control over their romantic lives. In The Atlantic, Faith Hill looks at how the threat of viral shaming makes people afraid to show affection in public. Across the world, that policing takes a physical form. Writing for the Diplomat, Lina Ma reports on parents hiring private camps to lock up their grown children over unapproved relationships. The two stories offer a sharp contrast between the invisible pressure of American smartphones and the literal confinement bought by Chinese parents. Writing just last week in The Atlantic, Faith Hill watches a private kiss in Central Park turn into a viral TikTok mob. She argues that the constant threat of social media shaming leaves people terrified to show affection outdoors. Notice how she links the fear of a smartphone camera to a nationwide drop in dating. Romance inherently requires looking a little stupid, she points out, and the risk of a stranger filming that awkwardness is freezing people out of love.
The horrible rise of the makeout police. A year after the Coldplay incident, another couple is going viral for PDA. Rarely, as a romance reporter, am I confronted with breaking news. When I am, it can come in the form of a TikTok video. And in some cases, it's a video of two people making out. This should never have been news in the first place. But on Thursday, a TikToker posted a video of a pair kissing on a bench in New York City's Central Park. "Get a room," he tells them as he approaches, clearly filming. "There's kids around." By today, the clip had received 3.9 million views. Commenters had identified the kissers, noting with glee that one of them appears to be married to someone else. Thousands flooded in to offer takes. Nice of you to teach them a lesson. One person posted a close-up picture of the woman's face, making fun of her appearance. Several took it upon themselves to ridicule the man's socks. Soon, the New York Post had published an article identifying the two as lawyers involved in defending OpenAI in a lawsuit, as if that gives their makeout public interest relevance, and referring to the incident as the kissy face. The Daily Mail shared that the woman appears to have called in the cavalry. Her parents, Tracy and Matt, have flown in from California to New York. I'd call mine too. The whole saga unfolded almost exactly a year after two coworkers, a company's CEO and its head of human resources, went viral for embracing at a Coldplay concert. A jumbotron moment that spread around the internet for months. People accused them of cheating on their partners. One person in the pair, Kristen Cabot, told the New York Times in December that she'd received 500 or 600 calls a day since the video blew up, and a total of about 60 death threats. She'd been labeled a slut and a homewrecker, and had her looks picked apart. Local police had to start surveilling her house. She resigned from her job. Her children became afraid to go out in public. Public shaming of this sort is terrible for the people filmed. But these videos don't affect only their subjects. They're corrosive to the whole culture. Even if the chances are slim that you'd show up in a viral video, the possibility can be chilling. And the last thing Americans need right now is another reason not to make out. Already, the country is in a season of unsexiness. Young adults in particular are having less sex and partnering up less. A large share of single people say they aren't interested in dating at all. Perhaps this is partly because these activities are, if you ask me, messy and a little embarrassing. Flirting and dating open the door to rejection. Kissing and sex are sometimes awkward, and I mean this in the best way, pretty much always weird. Falling in love? Well, that's actually just humiliating. Romance, in all of its forms, is like learning a language. You can't move forward without putting yourself out there, flailing around and looking stupid. The prospect of looking stupid is even scarier when your mistakes, or let's say less chic moments, can be permanently documented and distributed on a mass scale. Members of Gen Z, a cohort raised on social media, might feel especially paralyzed by this. When their parents were getting drunk and French kissing at parties, talking too loudly on a street corner, or failing to call someone's landline when they said they would, they did not have to worry about being filmed or having their texts screenshotted or becoming the next West End Caleb. Now, in a time of life meant for sloppiness and lessons learned, many young people seem unwilling to be imperfect. In one Yahoo YouGov poll published earlier this year, a large share of Zoomer respondents said that the fear of being cringe held them back from opening up emotionally, pursuing hobbies, seizing professional opportunities, and expressing themselves freely online. A survey from the dating app Hinge found that nearly 60% of Gen Z respondents said that their fear of rejection had stopped them from pursuing a relationship, and a similar share reported that they declined to tell someone how they felt because doing so might be a turnoff. This is what happens when you live in a panopticon. No one even has to have a camera out for people to feel, subconsciously, like they must be on good behavior. A tiny crisis PR professional fast walking around in their mind. Of course, accountability is good. The public shaming impulse has been, at times, a reaction to years of bad behavior, particularly among men accustomed to getting away with a lot and facing very few repercussions. On platforms including Are We Dating the Same Guy Facebook groups and the T app, some women have tried to create virtual whisper networks, naming offenders so that other people don't get hurt. But those efforts, and social media callouts in general, can seem like a giant club hammering a glass nail. In the case of public makeouts, one also has to ask, who is actually harmed? The online vigilantes don't really know what's happening in the Central Park man's marriage, and it's not their business.
Neither person in the video seems to have spoken with the press. Cabot, of the Coldplay episode, told The Times that she and her husband had already been divorcing at the time of the concert, and that her boss had been going through the same process. I made a bad decision, and had a couple of high noons, and danced and acted inappropriately with my boss, Cabot said. I want my kids to know that you can make mistakes, and you can really screw up, but you don't have to be threatened to be killed for them. I'd venture to say that more people could stand to have a couple of high noons and dance, and act, if not inappropriately, a little chaotically. In fact, I'm starting to appreciate the public display of affection as a means of resistance against the surveillance mindset. Why not kiss in front of strangers? In an erotic environment this frigid, plenty of people could stand to be reminded of what unabashed yearning looks like, live and spontaneous, not curated for the screen. The psychological research, insofar as it exists, smiles upon PDA. A doctoral dissertation completed last year, for instance, found that PDA was positively associated with relationship satisfaction and constructive communication. A 2022 study found that heightened PDA-related vigilance was linked to worse psychological well-being. To be fair, affectionate behaviors in public and private tend to be healthy for couples. But there's something extra special, I think, about the willingness to act on a surge of romantic fondness as if no one is watching, in a world where anyone could be. It shows that you're able to step away from guardedness, or perhaps that you're so taken with someone that you don't even care how you look. It's a feat of unself-consciousness in service of lust or love.
One might call it cringy, but that's precisely why it's great. I used to feel mild discomfort watching people I didn't know, or worse, ones I did, in an act of intimacy. I'd lightly judge and look away. Next time, instead, I'll tip my hat. Thank you, I'll say silently. That's the shameless energy this nation needs.
Faith Hill leaves you with the chilling sense that anyone with a smartphone can now act as the romance police. The threat in her piece is entirely decentralized. Strangers in a park, armed with TikTok accounts, creating a culture where young adults police themselves out of fear of going viral. Read alongside Lina Ma, that invisible, crowdsourced pressure suddenly looks like just one way to control a young adult's romantic life. Ma writes about parents who bypass social shaming entirely and skip straight to physical kidnapping. Instead of strangers filming a kiss in Central Park, you have a father hiring private contractors to drag a 21-year-old music student to a disciplinary camp hundreds of miles away simply because he dislikes her boyfriend. The contrast is sharp. In Hill's account, the surveillance is digital and driven by the crowd. Turn to Ma, and the control becomes physical, bought and paid for by the family. But put the two together, and you see the exact same impulse at work. A refusal to let young adults make their own messy romantic choices without someone stepping in to punish them.
In March, a 21-year-old music student in Beijing arrived at an apartment complex to teach a piano lesson. Waiting for her were her father, her aunt, and 2 employees of a private disciplinary institution. Her relatives told her the strangers were police officers investigating a family matter. Instead, they forced her into a vehicle, confiscated her phone, and drove her hundreds of miles to an institution in Hainan province, where she spent the next 11 days. According to Southern People Weekly, her parents objected to her romantic relationship and believed their once obedient daughter had become difficult to manage. They paid the institution to isolate her, monitor her daily life, and pressure her into ending the relationship. Public reporting indicates that this institution charged 26,800 yuan, around $4,000, for 6 months, or 36,800 yuan for a year, including room and board. The incident reflects a broader transformation in an industry once associated almost exclusively with treating so-called internet addiction. A July investigation by China Newsweek documented several adults placed in similar institutions by their own families. One 21-year-old man said his parents paid for a facility to correct his sleeping habits. A 25-year-old woman living alone reported being taken from Jiangxi to a disciplinary institution in Hubei after relatives and staff entered her home and confiscated her phone. Another investigation by Gemian News found adults as old as 33 living alongside teenagers in one behavioral correction school. These institutions emerged during the 2000s amid national anxiety over youth internet addiction. Many gained notoriety for military-style discipline and physical punishment before public criticism pushed the industry to rebrand as family education centers, behavioral intervention programs, or youth development organizations. The name has changed. The business model has simply expanded to adults whose life choices conflict with parental expectations. Romantic relationships, gaming, unemployment, unconventional careers, and irregular sleeping habits can all become reasons for intervention. China's criminal law makes it a crime to unlawfully deprive another person of personal liberty, punishable by up to 3 years in prison. A Gene commentary in the Beijing News made the point bluntly. A contract authorizing military-style management is not a valid defense. If its terms conflict with the law, the outlet argued, the contract itself is void, no matter how much paperwork a family signs beforehand. In practice, enforcement tells a different story. Lu Jin, who had turned to gig work delivering food after being laid off, was intercepted by 5 men his mother had hired after he failed to meet her expectations of stable employment and marriage. He flagged down police at a highway checkpoint while being transported to a facility in Chongqing. Officers stopped the vehicle but released it after his escorts produced an authorization letter signed by his mother. Lu Jin is an adult. His parents had no legal basis to sign away his rights, but the police let them do it anyway. Legally, adulthood in China begins at 18. Parents have no authority over where their adult children live or whom they date. Socially, and evidently in the eyes of some local police, parental responsibility is often understood to continue well past that threshold, especially for only children in whom families have invested heavily. The law is applied differently if a parent, rather than a stranger, is the one arranging the involuntary confinement. That is where these institutions find their market. They sell forms of control that parents can no longer exert over their adult offspring: transportation, isolation, restricted communication, tightly controlled daily routines, and constant supervision. In effect, parents are paying these institutions to force their children to acquiesce to their demands. As long as a signed parental contract can function in effect as a shield against prosecution, these institutions will keep expanding to justify whatever behavioral corrections parents want made.
What lingers after hearing these 2 stories is how easily affection gets boxed in. The tools of control look completely different. On one side of the world, parents pay guards to slide a physical deadbolt across a door. On the other, a stranger simply points a phone camera across a coffee shop. Yet both tactics do the exact same thing, leaving young adults terrified to just be vulnerable. When the invisible threat of a viral video builds a cage just as effectively as brick and steel, Where do two people go to finally be left alone?